And we're live. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the Mojo Show, your real estate podcast where we talk everything real estate. I'm your host, Joe Mortgage.
And I'm Cup of Joe Mortgage.
This week's episode, we are going to dive into a subject matter that if you're a realtor or a loan officer, you might want to grab pen and paper so you can take notes on this, because this is going to be a show specifically for you where we are going to dive into over the next 6 episodes, actually an incredible sales tool out there that has helped thousands of realtors and LOs in achieving their goals. That tool is known as PAPCAR, PAPCAR, PAPCAR. But before we get to that, I got a question for you, Joe. Why in the world do the homes in Texas, why are they constructed this way? My pipes are frozen. This is the second day that my pipes are frozen. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, you come from the north, right, where they know how to build homes that are ready for cold weather.
Yes.
I lived in Minnesota for a little bit. My wife is from there. In colder climates, they build everything with more of a basement, or your pipes are underground coming up from there.
Exactly.
And they dig your pipes way down, right? I think that is it.
Smart.
I think Minnesota, your water pipes coming in from the main have to be, I think, 6 feet down or something like that, to where, it's harder for it to get to the freeze. Where, here, like my hot water heaters are in my attic. And
mine's in my garage.
Yeah. And then you have people with the tankless hot water heaters. There's a neighborhood up here by me that they put the tankless hot water heaters on the outside of the house. And then you have some that are up in the attic. So, the construction here is because they don't plan on it getting that cold for that long. But there are a lot of people that are getting frozen pipes in new homes too, because they just don't insulate around the pipes well. And, luckily my house was built in 2001, and I had extra insulation put in the attic to kind of keep over the pipe. So I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't ran into that yet. So, but it's nuts. I agree with you.
I don't understand. I mean, the main water pipe is right outside above the ground, and the shutoff valve, the main shutoff valve, you crank, it's above ground. I mean, it's like, 2 or 3 feet above ground, just sitting there. It's like, of course it's good. I don't care how you insulate that or not, it's gonna freeze, right?
Yeah. There's a couple of things like with my pool equipment and stuff like that. I'll build a tarp over it if it's going to stay cold too long, and I'll put like a heat lamp in there.
Okay.
So I've seen people do that, over their mains if it comes up out of the ground. What I do is I just shut the water off to whatever's up out of the ground, so that way I don't have to worry about it. But not everybody has that luxury if it's the main going into the house.
Well, there you go. Well, hey, let's jump into the show today, right? Now that I've been able to vent a little bit about water pipes freezing here in Texas, which I just don't get it, but I expect that in Michigan, perhaps, but really not. And
at the beginning, you said, for real estate agents and mortgage loan officers, I think what we're going over the next 6 weeks is anybody in sales, anybody in any type of sales that you're driving business from. This series, what we're going through, and the people that we're going to have on talking about it, really will help if you take the right notes and you apply it. So I'm really excited. So I'm going to let you do the intro.
Love it. Super excited, of course, about the guest we have on our show today. He is the director of engagement at one of the branch leaders at NXT Mortgage, our home, Joe, you and I both. Which is actually NXT Mortgage is the Texas sales division of U Mortgage. He's also a 6-time runner-up in fantasy football. So I guess bridesmaid, never the bride, I guess. Please welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Josh Reed.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. love being a long time watcher, first time actual person on the show. I love it. Way to press on the wound. 6-time loser in my fantasy league. I'm the Buffalo Bills of my fantasy. So
how about them Cowboys, huh?
yeah.
Oh man! Luckily, Josh isn't a Cowboys fan. So
I don't know disappointment the same way as the Cowboys, but pretty close. Niner fan, so we'll see what happens. But
49ers fan, are you really?
I've always liked the Niners ever since. Well, I'm not old enough to be the Joe Montana, even though Joe Montana is like my goat. But I always loved Steve Young and Jeff Garcia, all those guys. So
by the time you started probably watching, Joe Montana already went to the Chiefs. So
exactly.
But well, Josh, tell us a little bit about your background and about you. And just reminding our viewers, if you have any questions as we're going through this, make sure that you put it in the comments, because we'll answer those questions. Or if you have any feedback, the things that you're hearing, let us know. But Josh, tell us a little bit about your background before we get into kind of today's topics.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm director of engagement at NXT Mortgage. I've been with NXT a little over 4.5 years. Before I went into the mortgage industry, I was at Goosehead Insurance. I did insurance for a couple of years. That even got me to Texas from Colorado. Liked it enough to help kind of build that team up a little bit, not enough to want to stay in a long profession within insurance. And prior to that, I actually was financial advisor in Colorado Springs. I loved helping out people, advising them what to do, be that fiduciary. And then throughout college, when I was going for marketing and business, I worked at the real estate company in Denver. I handled a lot of transaction coordinating for 5 really top realtors in that area. So kind of became full circle for me to go from real estate to financial advising to insurance to now mortgage. So how that applies to my role now is I do a lot of one-on-one coaching and day-to-day operations for our branch here in Texas. We are the largest branch for the entire company at U Mortgage. I have about 55 loan officers on our team that I find ways to help generate their business and grow it to where they want to go. So that's a little bit about myself when it comes to the professional side of things.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I got a text from one of the kids that I used to come to our softball game. Sorry, I'm going to give a shout out to Wyatt Childs, since he messaged me saying I saw you. So Wyatt, thank you for tuning in. That's awesome that you did that. But Josh, your background is a lot about helping people and understanding things, especially being an analyst, a financial analyst, and things like that. It's not always about numbers.
Right.
And I've learned so much from you since, joining NXT almost a year ago. It'll be a year ago next month, or actually at the end of this month. So, getting to know you and the insights that you bring. We're talking about PAPCAR, and the first P in that is, the prospecting. And everybody thinks that that's a bad word. But I think it's more knowing what direction you need for it. So kind of, tell me a little bit about how you identify prospecting. What do you go through to kind of find that, and what does it look like for you?
Yeah. So PAPCAR is great. I mean, both Joe's done a great job kind of building it up. But if you're in sales, I don't care if you're in originating, you're a realtor, anything. If you're selling vacuums, like PAPCAR is a humongous piece to help you grow your business. And it starts, there's a reason why the first P is the most important one. You can't move and progress through PAPCAR unless you do the dirty work and the hardest part of it, which is prospecting. And the crazy thing about prospecting is everyone has their own way of prospecting. And that's what's the cool thing about it. You could find success if it comes on your way of prospecting on social media. It's you going out into the world and meeting people organically. It's you going out there making calls. It really is, how are you feeling most confident in your own kind of ability for you to be able to go out there. So when you think of like, what is prospecting to you, best thing to do is jot it down. What do I do? If I were to recap my day, recap my week, what am I doing primarily most of the time? And when I start dissecting that in terms of like, well, is that helping me generate business? That's prospecting. No way, form, or shape you cut it. it's going to be prospecting. And when you start looking at that, that's where it gets the most creative. And the cool thing about it is there's a lot of things you could do to improve that over the time frame that you are pursuing this industry or what have you. So I want to pull something up because I don't know. I mean, people could love my Morgan Freeman voice or whatever, but if there's any of the audience that wants to go on and actually see something, I want to pull it up too, just so you can kind of see. So let me pull this up. I want to break it apart and show the PAPCAR. And you guys let me know, tech savvy wise, if you see what I'm seeing. Pull this up. All right. All right. Can you see that or no?
Yeah, here, there it goes.
There it is. All right.
There we go.
Now we're talking. So, I mean, you brought up PAPCAR, and that's exactly what we're in. And we go into the capital P of what it is, which in fact is. So, as I said earlier, prospecting is what you have to, no matter how you want to grow your business, you will never grow it unless you're prospecting and finding out, how am I growing my database? And the cool thing about growing your database is really going to stem into different ways. But the first thing I do is I start dissecting and understand what your sphere of influence is. So something you need to really start doing is understand, if I'm looking at my sphere of influence, what am I doing to fill that up? And depending on how long you've been in the industry, it could be a lot bigger, or if you're brand new, it could look like a blank canvas. Either way, it's pretty exciting because it allows you to really figure out what you need to do. But what I do is I get a little more selfish with it. I break it apart like a pie. And that's the first step, because sometimes if you look at it just as a sphere, it gets overwhelming and it's really hard to start kind of jotting down ideas or concepts or individuals that might fall within your sphere. So I take the concept of a sphere of influence, and then I take another model that we use for building rapport with individuals, which is the Ford model. And we talk about the Ford model in the past, where you talk all these different talking points to help you build a sense of rapport. But it works both ways, because you think, oh, if I talk about these type of things, I'll build rapport with someone. Well, you also characterize these individuals in your sphere of influence without even realizing it. So that's what I do. I start realizing, okay, if I'm going to look at the bigger piece of the pie, that's usually always going to be the F and the O, which in this case, many of you already know, that's family and occupation. So when it comes to you building your sphere of influence, you have to start realizing, okay, who are all the people that I consider my family? And when I say family, it's typically family and friends, because not sounding like Dom Toretto, but my friends are my family type of concept. It's the same mindset. Like, all these people that are close in your life, those are people in your sphere of influence, whether or not you're really stretching that. And kind of, I like to call it this, the 5 degrees of Kevin Bacon, if you're familiar. Like, how many individuals do you have to go back to then bring it back to your business? A lot of times it doesn't take that much unless you're asking the right questions. And same with the occupation. How many people within my professional career are other individuals that kind of go into the same boat as me? So if you're a loan officer, then that could be realtors, that could be financial advisors, it could be CPAs, what have you. If you're a realtor, it could be painters, it could be electricians, it could be all these other individuals that get into homes that you could be able to, like, oh, let me start having great relationships with these individuals, because that could help stretch out my sphere of influence for me to be able to spread my wings. And then I get into this little smaller piece of the pie here, and that's where I go into the R and the D, right? Because these ones are a little more specific compared to the other two, and not as applicable to what your role might be, but you have ways to actually stretch that. And that, of course, is recreation and dreams. When I say recreation, that could be, I love to golf, I love vehicles. Maybe your dreams is, I love to travel, I love collecting certain things, right? So those type of things that are more of a dream for you and an ambition that you keep going regardless, you're going to have other people that have those same type of recreational goals or dreams. And then those type of individuals, you could build those relationships with. So it's just understanding, am I stretching these out? And it all comes back to prospecting, because you have to realize, if I could start jotting people down that kind of fill into one of those 4 quadrants, now I'm starting to build out my sphere more than I even realized. And then you have to ask your question, how much are you getting in front of those people? Like I said, there's no right or wrong way of being able to get in front of those individuals. It's the biggest thing. And these are the 2 concepts that we're going into this 2024 this year with these are 2 words of intentionality and consistency. If you're going in with the concept of I'm going to be intentional, I'm going to reach out to these people, not to sell them something, but actually create value and strike up conversations, you're going to be able to have very genuine conversations with people. And the biggest thing is you don't want to be a one-hit wonder. You want to be consistent with it. You just don't want to pop up and talk to someone once and then just let it fall off. We do it all the time, unintentionally, of course. But when it happens, and that's the biggest thing, that you will find great success if you go in the concept of saying, okay, I'm going to break apart my sphere of influence. I'm going to have all my people in my quadrants, and I'm just going to treat it with the concept of being intentional, and I'm going to be consistent. And from there, you're going to be able to start having great prospecting, and then which will eventually lead through the progression of the PAPCAR.
So when you're doing this, right, and you're teaching it when it comes to the sphere, is this the best way for them to, kind of come up with a list of people that they're wanting to touch base with first versus just picking up the phone and start calling with no direction?
Correct. To me, and you could tell, like people are a lot smarter than we ever give them credit for. If you pick up a call and you try calling someone and you don't have a clear objective why you're calling them, they're going to catch on. Like, why is Joe calling me? Like, this is weird. It feels unnatural or what have you. So it makes a lot more sense to know the play before you call it, right? Like, think of football or coaching. Like, if you just go out there and try to make something happen without actually knowing the play before, it's going to be chaos. You're going to look like the Dallas Cowboys out there, right? It's the context of understanding, all right, if I know exactly why I'm calling this individual, I've already created a priority of how I want to attack it. My conversations are going to be a lot more smoother with them, right? And it just makes it a lot more genuine when you know, okay, I'm going through my progressions. I have all these individuals that fall into my friends and family. Yes, this person is a friend of my family. I have not talked to them in a while. Maybe it's worth having a conversation with them, asking for that business, asking them, hey, do you have individuals that fall into these buckets? And then being able to build off that conversation. A lot of times if we just try to call individuals, what are you calling about? And that's a big question. A lot of times, oh, am I trying to sell them? Oh, the rates are lower. Oh, the homes are a lot more affordable now. Like, what is your intention of calling? And at the end of the day, is that more a conversation of you're going in from more of a sales tactic, or are you going in trying to just build organic relationships? Because when you look at sales is strictly relationships. The transaction always could come after the fact, but it's the fact of, am I building a genuine foundation of a relationship first? Because that's how I'm going to actually get really long-lasting, clients for life, as well as referrals. Which, at the end of the day, that's the progression of PAPCAR, is everything leading to the eventual referral to then repeat the process. If you don't get referrals, you're not going to repeat the process of PAPCAR. It's just going to end, and it's going to be like a cliff. No one wants to be that one-hit wonder.
Right. No, very true. One thing that I've done in the prospecting part is, if I haven't talked to that person in a while, you brought that up, right? Instead of just calling them up, I'll talk with, somebody else that I know has maybe talked to them before or talked to them more recent than I have, and just, find out a little bit about them. And then I'll have kind of a warm introduction, even though it's a friend or whatever. If I'm calling up, maybe the next time that friend, reaches out to them, they share a little bit about the conversations we've had. I found that that's helped me reconnect with a lot of friends that have been in our business, especially realtor friends and things like that, just to reconnect. But it was a warmer handoff than me just calling up and saying, hey, my job role changed. So it's a little bit better of a conversation. Joe, I don't know if you've ran into things like that too, when you're going after your sphere and people that that you just haven't talked to in a while.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's tough as far as knowing what to talk about when you make that phone call, right? Because like you were saying earlier, Josh, you don't want to just, in the phone call, just dive right into, a sales pitch or a presentation, right? I mean, you want to build that rapport up with them, build that relationship up, because you're looking for a long-term relationship. And in doing so, you can actually reference your acronym, Josh, FORD, right? Family, occupation, recreation. You can reference that as far as points to talk about, right? Talk about their family, right? Joe, your son that plays football. I mean, how do you finish this year?
We went third round of playoffs. He did a great job. I was very proud of him every time he was called in, right? So, like you roped me in, right, by bringing my family
Right. And that's the thing, right? Especially as parents, we love to talk about our kids. I know Joe loves talking. I mean, because he's so proud of his son. So, I go right at that, right? And that's Grant, starting to know your audience and who you're speaking to, and that you can talk about their dreams or what they like to do recreation wise, and stuff. So I mean, those are great talking points, all four of those, I think, in building the rapport and relationship, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I talk about this a lot because when you're going through your sphere of influence, this is you recapping any individual that you already kind of know, right? And there's going to be times where you're trying to basically prospect by meeting people you don't know. That's where you're progressing through forward. And there's going to be times where it's like, oh, I try to bring up family. They're a single person. They don't really got much to talk about. They moved here. All their family's back north or whatever. Maybe they don't want to talk about that as much. Well, let's progress. Let's move towards occupation. Let's find out what they're interested in with recreational. If you get to a point in a conversation, you're starting to hit dreams, you've done a pretty good job in terms of rapport building, because usually dreams aren't the first thing someone dives into in terms of like, oh, I've
Right.
always wanted to swim with the sharks or go to Australia or all these things. Usually that's something that gets kind of stretched out as you progress through those conversations. But it's really important to understand this is a great tool when you are going out and meeting with individuals. And the biggest thing that people make the mistake of when it comes to prospecting is they try to do the double P. They try to skip over the A and go PP, which is crazy to think of, but they try to go from prospecting to straight to presentation.
Right.
And a lot of times people are like, oh, like I had this great conversation. I tried to do it and we just didn't click. And now I can't get in touch with this person. It's like, yeah, they forced your hand to go straight into presentation. You need to give your time. You need to give yourself time to go in, prospect this individual, and then set that appointment. It's the concept of understanding what's the order and understanding, do not get pressured in to do something. Have a system for yourself and understand that my objective, my influential objective when I'm prospecting with individuals is to build enough, strong enough relationship with these individuals that they want to meet again with me. That is it. That is your influential objective. If you walk away from that and they want to meet with you again, you've graded yourself an A in that situation. If they walk away and they're like, hey, this was great, and then they don't give you their contact information or anything like that, go back to the drawing boards. Where did I mess up? What could I have done better? All these little things. You're going to have it. Rejection is a real piece of business. It happens to every single person. I don't care what you're selling. Sometimes it's just not going to sell with someone. That's okay. Even the greatest salesman will tell you, you can't force someone to sell something, or you can't force someone to buy something from you. All you can do is ask the right questions and figure out, are they in the market to work with me? Or are they going to be in the market to work with me? Once you figure out that stuff, then you got them. Then you have built a strong enough relationship, and the biggest thing, which is trust. If they don't trust you, they're not going to want to set up another appointment with you. So all these little things, they're great tactics, but at the end of the day, it's going to be hit and miss. It's going to be at bats. You're going to hit some, you're going to miss others. But the biggest thing is when you are missing, are you learning something from it? And you're taking it in stride to the next one.
Yeah. The whole thing, I remember when we did Ford around the coffee roundtable that you run, and, it made me start thinking, when I do call up people, I did a little research and yes, if you talk to me, I've gone to your Facebook page, especially if we're friends on Facebook, and, I just find out some of the interest or something that you just did. So that way it is an easier intro to that phone call with realtors that I haven't talked to that are friends of mine, or with, even with other referral partners and clientele. Because if I see you posting pictures like, Josh, I know you love your corgis, right? You're a dog person. If I'm calling you up, I'm asking you, about the picture that you just took, just so that way it sparks that, I have an interest in you, and it's not an interest in what I can provide for you right away. And that's the big part about prospecting that I think we all miss. Like you said, we go into the double P. If you skip that time to get to know that person just a little bit more, you take a little bit more out of that conversation about the person you're talking to, that means more than what I can do for you, because now I have an interest in that person. And that's the great thing that I like about what I've learned from the Ford acronym and how to stay true to prospecting, because all I'm doing on prospecting is I'm trying to find a lead or I'm trying to set an appointment. Those are the two things when it comes to it. So.
Yeah, I mean, they're all great points. And social media is another big piece. People try to prospect on social media all the time. The problem is you can't be selfish with it. Meaning, if you're going on social media, you can't always be the person that just does targeted engagement where you're just trying to constantly reach out to other people. You got to create your own content too for other people to have opportunities to conversate with you. It just can't be a one-sided mirror where you see everyone else's life and they can never get a piece of you. It's the context of trust, right? They need to know who you are on the other side too. So that's an important piece to think of.
And when it all, I mean, we're all these different things that we're talking about, really just kind of go back on something that you said earlier, Josh. All of this revolves around the one key thing that we're doing here, and that's building relationships. Right? That's the key to this, to the trust that you're talking about, right? So that they trust you and want to not only work with you, but go to that next step in PAPCAR as far as setting an appointment, right? It's building that relationship, because if you don't have that relationship, they're not going to do business with you. They're not going to want to set an appointment with you. They're not going to want to do anything with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, they sure as hell won't refer you after they work with you if there's no relationship there. They're going to be like, hey, thanks for the help. I kind of used you, but I'm not going to use you again type of thing. Or right. So trust is big. And a lot of times, and I've had this conversation with so many different people that have come through this industry, because no one likes to consider themselves salesmen. They feel like it's a very not good topic to think of. They think of this like sleazy individual when they kind of think of the word salesman. But at the end of the day, we're all salesmen. We're selling something. We're selling either our own personal brand, what we're actually product we have. Either way, we're all salesmen. And I always say the biggest difference between creating great influence on an individual or manipulation, which most people have that kind of context when they think of a bad salesman, is the manipulation. The biggest thing that makes the difference between that is transparency. If you're transparent with what you're trying to do, if you're building organic, sincere relationships and actually trying to figure out who an individual, it's one thing to ask a question and get them to tell you what it is. It's another thing to actually take the time to remember that or jot that down. So then you could reinforce that in a later conversation. Nothing's worse than someone telling someone something because they're being vulnerable, saying, oh, I got family up in North Dakota and all this other stuff. And then you ask the question of like, oh, where's your family from? Even though you've asked them in the past. Like, it's like, damn, I've already kind of told you that, right? It's right. The big thing of understanding, okay, if they're telling me something that's truly about them, am I taking the time to actually jot that down somewhere to remember that, to then be able to reinforce that even later on? That's the difference between a really excellent salesman and someone that's just looking to kind of make that one and done type of thing.
Right. Are you hearing or are you actually listening to what they say? Right. That's exactly. The difference right there.
You know, my wife's been trying to teach me that for 20 years. So,
yeah.
Love you, Tina.
So, I don't know. But.
Right. Well, you know, Josh, I know we're coming up, towards the end. Any other insight that you want to give before we kind of, wrap up? Because we only go 30 minutes, but I know we could sit here and talk about prospecting for hours. It's just something that, there's so much out there and there's so much things that you can take away from it. But any final topic or thing that you want to hit on that's important for people to understand?
I think the biggest thing for people to understand is they have to really just put where they're at in perspective, right? You can't force something through something. And I say this because so many people will try to jump into this industry. Maybe they're brand new and they see all these results of someone else compared to where they're at. And it will put them in this dark place. They feel like, oh, I'm not good enough to do this. No, you're exactly where you need to be right now. And there's a reason always where you're at. I don't care if you're the very top and you're just performing really well. Realize, what can I do better? Or if I am doing really well, what can I do to sustain the success when times do get tough? Because we've seen it. This market that we're in right now it's different than what it was last year. And it sure as hell was different than what it was 2-3 years ago. So we've already experienced different shifts of types of markets, depending on what industry you're even in. But you have to realize you're in exactly the spot you need to be. So take the opportunity to learn something from where you're at to put you in a better place for tomorrow. That's probably the best thing you could ever do for yourself. And the best thing too is put yourself around the right type of people that keep you on focus. That's big. Accountability is one of the best things you could ever have. It's not to say that people are just going to stay on top of you and you tell you all these things that they wouldn't do themselves or anything like that. It's to say, I want to put myself around like-minded people that are holding me accountable to the goals that I want to hit, and I'm going to hit them because of that. Like, those are the best things that you could do to put you into that success. That'd be what I'd say there.
Awesome. Good stuff. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate you as a guest this week, and all your insights. Hopefully it was very valuable to all you realtors and LOs out there. Next week, we're going to continue to dive into the second important piece of PAPCAR, and that's appointments. Because what do you do once you've been prospecting? What do you do next? Well, is set an appointment. So we'll definitely dive into that. So tune in next week for further insights into PAPCAR that we go through. Thank you, everyone, for listening and tuning in. Really appreciate. Please follow, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff on Facebook, our YouTube channel, all that good stuff. And if you have any further questions, please drop us an email to the Mojo Show podcast @gmail.com.
Hey, Joe, we had some listeners actually comment that I think you just need to give them a quick shout out saying thank you for watching. I mean, we're messaging. Yeah.
Look at all these. Wow. We got Wyatt. This jumped in. Jennifer, thank you so much. Justin. Awesome. Robert. Hey, guys, thank you so much for jumping on, saying hi, all that. I really appreciate that. Again, tuning in is just really appreciate that. Thanks, Joe, for mentioning that. I didn't even see that up there. I was paying too much attention, I guess, to Josh.
Hey, no, they just came in, so I wanted to make sure we gave that. But back to you to close us out, sir.
All right, let's close this out. I'm Joe Mortgage, and that handsome guy over there with the beard, that's Cup of Joe Mortgage, and we'll see you next week.
Mr.